viewers. My name is Lusanda Precious Vika from Department of Education, a subject advisor in OR Tambo Inland. Welcome to the ECDOE broadcast studio. Today's lesson will be covering the topic for your full understanding. Today's topic, I will be talking about animal nutrition. I will be explaining about the comparison between ruminants and non-ruminants, their functions, the external structure, the internal structure, the enzymes that are in it, and we'll end up talking about all the calculations that we have in agricultural science. Now, we have a fowl and a pig. These are the non-ruminants. As you know that we have classified our farm animals into two, the ruminants and the non-ruminants. Now let us look at the non-ruminants. What are non-ruminants? Non-ruminants are animals with simple stomach. It is also called monogastric animals. They have simple stomach in that they don't have compartments. So we will talk of them now, looking at the fowl. We'll start from the ingestion of food as we are moving with the structure of this farm animal. And we will continuously compare this fowl with that of a pig. And then let's go. When a fowl ingests food, it takes in food through the beak, and then food goes down through the oesophagus, down to the crop. So this is the first part when food lands after it has been ingested by a chicken. It lands into the crop. When we talk of the function of a crop in digestion, we don't mention the storage part. We talk of softening and moistening of food. We don't mention anything about storage because it is not part of a digestion. And then when it is from the crop, it moves down to the proventriculus. A proventriculus is that portion of a stomach of a fowl which has got pimple-like structures, which has got pores in them. And this part of his stomach is called a glandular stomach. You don't have to say a proventriculus when a question asks what identify the part in C, maybe the proventriculus. You don't have to say a glandular stomach. It is a description of the stomach. You rather say, you give the name of the stomach, which is a proventriculus. So it is where gastric juice is deposited, okanye is secreted. The gastric juice, the gastric enzymes are secreted by this part of the stomach. It is where chemical digestion takes place. And then food moves from the proventriculus to the gizzard. From the proventriculus, the food moves into the gizzard. The gizzard is that part of a stomach of a fowl where mechanical digestion takes place. By mechanical digestion, we mean the grinding of food, the physical digestion of food, where food is broken down now. There is an adaptation of the stomach to perform its work. That is, it has got thick muscles with small stones. They help in contracting the muscles. They contract so that the stones, they break the maize, okanye the food particles in it. That is why it is said to be the physical digestion taking place there. And then food moves from the gizzard to the small intestine. This is a small intestine. All this part is a small intestine. Let us stop here for a fowl, and then let me move to a pig, as we are still talking of the non-ruminants, the monogastric animals with a simple stomach. Then a pig. Let's get into the pig. A pig, which is also a non-ruminant, a monogastric animal with a simple stomach. A pig ingests food through the mouth. The mouth of a pig has got a snout. It digs up to get food, and then the lower part, or the lower jaw of the animal acts as a spade for the intake of food. When food gets into the mouth of an animal, it starts grinding, unlike in the case of a fowl. We said the grinding part starts in the gizzard, where after the proventriculus, then the gizzard or the ventriculus. So the crushing, the grinding of food in the pig starts in the mouth. A pig has got full set of teeth like human being. I used to say so. It has got the canines, the incisors, the premolars, and the molars. It has got the salivary glands, 3 sets of salivary glands in the mouth of a pig. 1 set of a salivary gland in the mouth of a pig is located below the ear, which is called the parotid gland. Another set is located underneath the tongue. It is called the sublingual gland. I used to say you can't forget the gland underneath the tongue. Sublingual, language, sublingual, because we used to talk, okay, the way of keeping the name of the gland. And the last set of a gland is found under the lower jaws, which is called the submandibular gland. All the sets of the glands, they secrete amylase, the salivary amylase, which is alkalinic in nature. Then, after the grinding of food from the mouth of the pig, the food moves down into the oesophagus. Oesophagus, we saw it in a fowl, now it is in the pig. It is a passage, a tube-like passage that moves the food from the mouth, from the end of the mouth, that is the throat, down into the stomach. When food moves down the oesophagus to the stomach, it moves in a peristaltic way. That is called a peristalsis. Peristaltic movement, the contraction and relaxation of the muscles, the contraction and relaxation of the muscles, pushing the bolus downwards into the stomach of a farm animal. If you notice, I said pushing the bolus. When the food is about to be swallowed, the tongue works together with the teeth to roll out the food binding. The binding is caused, is facilitated by this saliva that is mixing the food, breaking down starch into simple sugar, and then the food moves down into the stomach of a farm animal. Now let us look at the components in the stomach, the components of gastric juice and their uses in the stomach. A stomach of a pig is pear-shaped, like it has got 3 parts. The part closest to the heart is called the cardiac part. It has got a muscle that connects the stomach with the esophagus and is called a cardiac sphincter muscle. And then middle of the stomach is called the fundus, the body of the stomach. And then towards the end of the stomach, it is called a pylorus part. It has got a muscle tight to release the food down into the small intestine. And this muscle is called the pyloric sphincter muscle, the pyloric sphincter muscle. Now let us look at the contents of the stomach, the gastric juice contents. The gastric juice has got water in it. It has got the organic salts, also the mucus in it. So also we have a gastrin enzyme that is in the stomach. This gastric enzyme, when it secretes, it gives a smell that stimulates the secretion of a gastric juice. For the gastric juice to secrete, the more the stomach smells the gastrin enzyme, and then it begins to release the gastric juice. And also we have another enzyme, which is the renin. The function of a renin, it changes the soluble carcinogen into insoluble casein. In the case of milk, it curdles the milk. It changes the soluble carcinogen into insoluble casein. You'll find that you drink milk, and then when you vomit milk, you no longer vomit milk, but you vomit sour milk. Then we have the pepsinogen. A pepsinogen is in an inactive mode in the stomach unless there is food, and then the hydrochloric acid in the stomach activates the inactive pepsinogen into active pepsin. So then we have an enzyme called the pepsin. The pepsin, the function of a pepsin, it changes a proteins into the polypeptides, that is your proteoses and the peptones. Then let us look also in the function of the hydrochloric acid. As I have mentioned, that the hydrochloric acid activates the inactive pepsinogen into active pepsin, that is the enzyme. Then the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, it changes the contents of the stomach. Remember, we said the salivary gland in the mouth, they secrete the salivary amylase, that is the enzyme that changes the starch into simple sugars. So the medium, the pH medium there is alkalinic. And then when the bolus gets into the stomach, there comes the hydrochloric acid. So the hydrochloric acid changes the pH medium in the stomach into acidic form. So another function of the hydrochloric acid is that because of its antisepticism, it acts as an antiseptic because it prevents the rotting of the contents of the stomach. So the contents of the stomach doesn't get rotten because of the presence of a hydrochloric acid. And also this hydrochloric acid changes sucrose, that is a disaccharide, into monosaccharide. A sucrose is changed into a glucose and fructose. Now let us look at the activity. Study the schematic representation below, which illustrates the digestion of nutrients in the stomach and the small intestine. All these enzymes that I was talking about in the stomach, they are here. But we haven't yet reached the small intestine. So this will be your homework. So let us bring it forward. Homework brought forward. Okay. Now, we haven't yet reached the small intestine. Remember, these farm animals all have small intestine. So that is why I want to go into the small intestine at once. I don't want to do the small intestine of a fowl, small intestine of a pig, and then small intestine of ruminants. So we'll get into the small intestine of these farm animals at once. Now let us look at the ruminant animal as against that, the one that I have already discussed, the non-ruminants. Ruminant animals are animals with complex stomach. They have 4 compartments. Namely, it is the rumen, the reticulum, the omasum, and the abomasum. The first 3 stomachs are regarded as the 4 stomachs before the actual stomach, not as in 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4, the FORE stomachs, because they are before the true stomach. The true stomach, which is the abomasum. So the reticulum, the rumen, the reticulum, omasum are said to be the 4 stomachs. Ne? And then in a young ruminant, the 4 stomachs are not functional as they are not yet developed. They are underdeveloped as the animal hasn't yet started grazing. The animal is still sucking from the mother. So the flow of the milk gets into the mouth of an animal down into the abomasum, which is regarded as a true stomach. Also, because of that milk flowing through the 4 stomachs into the abomasum is said to be the milk stomach. These 4 stomachs, that is the rumen, reticulum, and abomasum, they just form a tube down straight into the abomasum. So this tube is called the oesophageal groove, that is the oesophagus, but it forms the continuation of the oesophagus. That is why it is called, it is an oesophageal groove. It just forms a groove directly into the main stomach. Now let us look at these parts of the stomach. Let us look at the rumen and reticulum. Why rumen and reticulum at once? It is because somewhere, somehow, these first 2 stomachs, they perform the same function, and also they are regarded as reticulorumen because of their function. The first 3 stomachs, all of them have the finger-like projections, the finger-like outgrowths called the papillae. These papillae, the function of a papillae is they provide heat, and so it is called a heat producer, provides heat, and they are called the heating rods. So the reticulum is also called a honeycomb stomach. Again, when you are required to identify the part labeled, say the reticulum. Don't say the honeycomb stomach, because the honeycomb stomach is just a description. The name of the stomach is reticulum. So it is a honeycomb stomach. Here in this part, it is a bag-like stomach. As you can see, its structure, it looks like a bee, honey, whatever, where the bees has got the honey in it. So it is where foreign objects are lodged here. The nails, the wires, the stones, the bones lodges here in this part of the stomach, the reticulum. And then the rumen is the most part in the first three stomachs with large papillae, that is these heating rods. They appear the most and they are large enough in the rumen. So I said both of these stomachs have they have a combined name, which is a reticulorumen. When an animal ingests food, when food gets inside the mouth of an animal, it is partially digested and swallowed, as we used to see cattle, sheep, goats grazing. They just put in the grass or the food and partially digest and then swallow. The food that they swallow, they move peristaltically, as I mentioned in the esophagus of those farm animals before. And then when they reach the stomach, that is the first part of these compartments of a rumen, it moves to the rumen and reticulum. So the animal ingests food, and this grass or food or feed gets into the first two compartments. In these first two compartments, there are a group, a community of microorganisms. These microorganisms ensures that there is a digestion of cellulose. Because this farm animal, most of their feed has got cellulose. We used to see these animals grazing. So there in the field, feeding, grazing grass, there's a lot of cellulose. So these microorganisms, they digest cellulose. In the reticulorumen, there is an enzyme that is secreted to digest cellulose, and this enzyme is called the cellulase. When cellulose is digested, the end product of digestion of cellulose is the volatile fatty acids. The volatile fatty acids is acetic acid, butyric acid, and propionic acid. Another end product in the digestion of cellulose is the carbon dioxide and the methane, that is the gases. So the gases escapes through the belching. When an animal belches, the gases escapes, and these end products needs to be eliminated. You will see here when we talk of that. They need to be eliminated for the full functioning of these microorganisms in the reticulorumen. So the end products of volatile fatty acids are absorbed directly into the walls of a rumen. So another thing that is the end product of the digestion of cellulose is a range of vitamin B complex. The second thing that happens during the digestion of, during the function of microorganisms is the synthesis of amino acids. Amino acids are synthesized there in the reticulum. Let me combine these 2 points, the synthesis of amino acid and the hydrolysis of a protein. These farm animals, that is the ruminants, you do not need to feed them with a feed of high protein, okay, with a feed with high protein, because they can synthesize amino acids, they can hydrolyze a protein during a digestion by microorganisms in the reticulum. And also, the last point, by these microorganisms in the reticulum is the synthesis of vitamins. The vitamins that are synthesized in the reticulum is vitamin K, the fat-soluble vitamin, and a range of vitamin B complex. So those are the vitamins that are synthesized in the reticulum. So, good learner, it means, therefore, ruminants cannot be fed with a feed of high protein, cannot be fed with a feed with high amounts of vitamins, because they can synthesize the vitamins, they can synthesize the amino acids and hydrolyze a protein. So now, let us look at the requirements of these microorganisms to perform their function correctly, or 100% in the reticulum. The microorganisms to live well and perform their function is that the environment should be moist, it should be warm, and it should have no oxygen, that is anaerobic environment. Suitable temperature of between 39 and 40 degrees Celsius. The environment should be more or less acidic. It should be between 6.4 to 7. That is, 7 is neutral in our pH scale. So it should be slightly acidic. There should be sufficient mineral nutrients. Mineral nutrients, your micro and macronutrients. Micro and macronutrients are needed by these microorganisms specifically for their growth and reproduction. There should be easily digestible carbohydrates, the starch and the sugars, because dry pastures will always be dry and they need to be supplemented. So when we add easily digestible carbohydrates, it should be simple sugars, that is the starch and the sugar. There should be sufficient nitrogen. The nitrogen compounds, the ammonium compounds like your urea and butyrate, as they are the source of a protein. We know that a protein, once it is in an animal's feed, we know that the animal has grazed the protein from the pastures. The source of protein is nitrogen. And through the life cycle of nitrogen from our previous grade, the grade 11, we know how does the soil, the plant gets nitrogen through lightning and rain. So the source of protein is nitrogen. Also, lastly, there should be continual elimination of end products. The end products I have just mentioned, that if fatty acids, they should be eliminated by being absorbed directly into the walls of a rumen, and the gases and carbon dioxide should continuously be expelled through the mouth of an animal during belching. This is the end of the first part of our lesson. Please join me to the second part of the same lesson. We have come to an end of our lesson. You can leave your questions on the comments. Don't forget to leave the name of your school so we can give shout out. Please share, recommend, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. See you on our next lesson. Bye-bye.